Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of April and the full moon that we have coming up in Scorpio on the 23rd. I'm also going to be taking another look at the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, with looking at the specific chart. Now, I really want to say that I'm filming this on the 7th of April, filming it the day before the total solar eclipse. So any events that are happening on the day of the total solar eclipse and ongoing, this video isn't going to catch them. So please be aware of that, because I suspect some big natural things may be happening on the day of the eclipse and several days after, and possibly some unnatural things as well. We've already seen some quite unusual seismic activity happening. I mean, we've seen big earthquakes in Taiwan and Japan, but also the earthquake that happened in the New York area. It was really quite rare. Although it wasn't huge, it's unusual in that geography. And of course, that's a place of high density. So it's that kind of thing. This is an extremely dynamic and event-packed month, as you are all well aware. There's been a huge amount of hype around this total solar eclipse, but that will continue really in the coming weeks, because it isn't, as I've emphasized, the total solar eclipse is not just for one day. It's the beginning of a very powerful, really trigger point, ignition point for everything that falls from that. Jupiter-Uranus is the same. That happens on the 20th in the UK, and Europe, it's anything east of us, it happens on the 21st. It is just, again, not for one day. It's the start point of a series of events. So let us look at the chart for the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, because that's going to be coming up. We're already into that energy. The total solar eclipse and the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction are blending together with many themes of independence, freedom, sovereignty, risk-taking, initiative. You know, the Aries energy, first sign of the zodiac, is I am. I initiate. I'm the pioneer. I go solo. So it's like a break point. And a lot of it, I think all of us have felt an enormous amount of intensity, a lot of it just building, building, building up to this total solar eclipse. And there will be a sense, I think, of breakthrough or release, particularly in this second half. But it is demanding that we question every aspect of our life. It's demanding that we question the socio-political, economic system that we live in, everything we've grown up in. It's demanding that it questions us, our habits, our daily structure, our normal reactions to things, the way we go about our work, the way we go about our relationships. And it is very likely that there will be shocks, surprises, revelations. I've certainly had them in the last week, for all of us, that will make us change, because we are shedding the old skin, if you like. That's really strongly enforced in the second half of April. We are shedding our old skin to do a quantum jump in our evolution. This evolution for us is not gradual, it's not linear, it's not smooth, it's going in quantum jumps. And all of us, to a large extent, are being fast-tracked in our evolution, some more than others. An analogy I've often used is, when we were at the airport, you could have chosen fast track to get on the plane, or just normal slower track. Nevertheless, we're all going to get on the same plane. It's just whatever you've chosen. We're all heading for unity consciousness. We are all ultimately one consciousness as humanity. But some of us have chosen a faster route, and we've self-selected that by our frequency. And we may be feeling bigger jumps than the average, because we've turned up the volume, we've turned up the speed. So be aware that this is an incredibly positive and productive period, even though it could feel very disruptive, very lumpy, very seismic in many, many senses as we go through it. But nevertheless, it's all part of the evolutionary process. Okay, so let me start by taking a look. Let's all take a look at the Jupiter-Uranus chart. Now, I want to say that I'm going to put the link for the longer Jupiter-Uranus video that I posted a month or so ago. I'm going to put this below this video. It's very important that you watch that because I'm setting out some very, very big themes for this conjunction. This conjunction happens every 13 to 14 years. It's an important one because it's being reinforced by many other astrological factors and cosmological factors indeed. So it's very important that you watch that. This video will not cover all of that. I'm just looking more specifically at the chart itself. So, although Jupiter-Uranus conjunction happens on the 20th of April in the US, by the time you get to the UK, it's going to be early morning on the 21st, and Europe and anywhere east of us, it's going to be happening also on the 21st. So it's going to be happening. This conjunction lasts for about an hour. It's not like the moon, where the moon is moving on very fast. This conjunction lasts for about an hour, kind of 1:30 to 2:30 universal time, clock time, because the UK is on British summer time. It will be 2:30 to 3:30 in the UK. So if you don't live in the UK, ignore the houses, ignore the clock face. We're just going to be looking at where the planets fall and their aspects to each other. Now, firstly, I mentioned in my previous update that Mercury is going to be making 3 conjunctions to Chiron. It's retrograde at the moment, Mercury. It's retrograde until the 25th of the month, and then it starts to move forwards, and it will finally, for the 3rd time, conjunct Chiron on the 6th of May. But this is a whole process of us becoming mentally aware of any wounding, any illness. That could be individual, it could be a whole collective woundedness that we've been living through and haven't been fully cognizant, Mercury, of it until now. And we're becoming much more cognizant of it. And we will be vocal about it. Mercury in Aries will be vocal. It will speak out. And again, this is linked, just like the total solar eclipse in Aries, the North Node in Aries. This is to do with the I amness, where our power lies, our sense of inner authority, our sense of sovereignty, where that has been dimmed down or squashed into a kind of victim consciousness. The 2 keywords for Aries are I am. You know, this very strong sign associated with sovereignty. The other thing about this repeated conjunction between Mercury and Eris is that Eris is actually the maverick as well. That's an aspect, as well as being the wounded healer. It's linked to being the maverick, because Chiron orbits between Saturn and Uranus in the heavens. It goes beyond Saturn. So Saturn is the conventional, the status quo, traditional, the way we've always done things. Chiron is going beyond that. So, we're not going to do it that way anymore. We're going to feel into our maverick. We're going to feel into our individuality, our unique essence or authenticity. And of course, all of those themes are reinforced because Chiron is conjunct Eris, which has many of those same themes of the warrior goddess of chaos and discord to achieve truth, to achieve justice, everyone needing to be heard, nobody excluded. And of course, Uranus has very similar themes as well, of the rebel, the individualist, the maverick, the one who doesn't obey the rules. So Chiron, Eris, and Uranus all are highlighted at this time and sharing the same themes. We've got the South Node in Libra, where we have been perhaps a little bit people-pleasing. We may have been compliant in our individual relationships or in the collective. This is time for a big shift. I mean, look at this just lineup of planets in Aries. It's extraordinary, this stellium of planets in Aries with a similar message. And Venus conjunct Chiron here is saying we're going to heal with love, which is exactly what we're doing. We're going to heal with love individually and collectively. So this is really a step change, as I've been saying, in our evolution. It's a jump. And see where 2149 degrees of Taurus falls in your chart, which house area. So it's very important to see where that sudden change will happen. Both of these are sky gods, both Jupiter and Uranus. They're both to do with freedom. There's this tremendous sense of breakthrough, liberation, freedom, revolution. It's a need to feel alive. It's a need to break up old stale patterns, break up the routine, do something different from this point on. Do it, even if you have a daily structure, try and do that structure in a different order, or go to a different place, or something. I mean, Nancy Rebecca was talking about this, even drive a different way home or a different way to work. Do it differently, rather than just staying in those stale old routine patterns, particularly if you have a lot of fixity in your chart. Particularly if you have planets or angles between about 19 and 23 degrees of fixed signs that are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, you may be feeling this even more strongly. But we're all gonna feel it. And remember, it's not just for one day. Even though this is a one-hit conjunction, it's a start point. It's like turning on a car, lighting a firework. That sort of a feeling. It's a jump, with very different energy coming in. And isn't it interesting that this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is actually trine to that very, very important Saturn-Pluto conjunction you'll all remember from the 12th of January 2020, that was a conjunction of contraction and control and limitation. Saturn moved into Aquarius, I think, on the 22nd of March, limitations in Aquarius on freedom, sign of freedom. Most of the world went into lockdown on the 23rd of March, the next day. Extraordinary. So that was a big conjunction of contraction, control, limitation. Here, because Jupiter-Uranus is trine that place, which would be over here somewhere, trine it, then there is a sense of breaking beyond that, breaking free, breaking beyond it, because there's such a surge from the collective of we're going to do it differently. We want to be free. We want to be sovereign. We want to be autonomous. We want to be pioneers in our own life. We want to start running our lives from the inside out and choosing our reality. There is such a strong sense of that in this chart. Tremendous. So we also see that something is happening around agriculture, and I think that's very clear in the world, no doubt. But Mercury is square. It doesn't look like it's square because it's a slightly, I'm using a Placidus house system, and I don't want to get into the weeds of that, but essentially Mercury is square to Ceres. Ceres is the largest asteroid. She's the goddess of grains and harvests, etc. And not only Mercury is square to Ceres, so there's a lot of talk about food production, grains, harvests, but also Chiron, is there some wounding to the food production system in some way, and Eris too. In fact, I think Ceres is pretty much square the midpoint of Mercury and Chiron. So there's some kind of wounding or potential damage to food production, food harvest, grains, etc. But we are going to be vocal about this, and we are not going to sit down and let that take place, because Eris is part of this square. Eris is part of this picture. So, and again, this is exactly really one of the big messages of Jupiter-Uranus, because Uranus is the planet of revolution. Jupiter expands that urge. It's in the sign of Taurus, which is to do with food and agriculture, food growing, food production systems. So really, really clear that a big area of focus is around that too. However, Ceres is also in a trine, a very positive aspect to Jupiter-Uranus, which is about new methods of growing food, new methods, innovation in many ways of growing food. Now, in some ways, the Uranus side of that, Uranus always wants to make things more efficient, more industrialized, more this could be kind of lab grown food and that kind of thing, more factory based, because it's got, how can we kind of max the production by making it more industrial. However, the other urge, because it's in Taurus, is to go back to the organic, the biodynamic, planting by the phases of the moon. And that is going to be part of the innovation as well. So it's going to go in two different directions. But nevertheless, we have a very, very positive grand trine in Earth. Here it's a little bit wide, I have to say, but nevertheless, this is pretty much operational. And also it's a grand trine that is out of sign with Pluto. And indeed, it picks up Sedna here. So it's a very, quite tight, actually, grand trine in Earth between Sedna, 29 of Taurus, the moon, 29 of Virgo, another Earth sign, and Pluto is the slightly out of sign aspect of that grand trine at 2 degrees of Aquarius. Because this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction lasts an hour, the moon remains at 29 degrees of Virgo, just to let you know, although the minutes change over that hour, the degree doesn't. So this combination of the moon, Pluto, and Sedna is about a real transformation and metamorphosis, Sedna, for the Earth in some way. That again, ultimately is productive. Yes, seismic activity potentially is higher here, Jupiter-Uranus, but so is the productivity of those things, because it's part of the metamorphosis for humanity, the metamorphosis for the people. Both Sedna and Pluto are to do with death, transformation, and metamorphosis. So that grand trine, I think, is actually very interesting. So the energy of all of this conjunction is actually blending with the energy of the total solar eclipse supermoon, as well as the full moon that we're going to look at in a moment in Scorpio, which is also very powerful just 3 days later, 3 days after this. The other aspect, just coming back briefly to moon trine to Pluto here, if Pluto was just a couple of degrees back at the end of Capricorn, you could see that trine more easily. But this is also bringing up emotional intensity of the people, issues around health, Virgo, freedom, Aquarius, truth, Aquarius. Where does the power lie? Pluto, new technology, AI, It's about making the body more efficient. And of course, ultimately, we are going to have already, in fact, have invasive aspects of AI as well as non-invasive. And I just ask you to use your discernment here, because I think it's very important that the choices we make are conscious and wise and thinking long term, thinking strategically with AI, because it's coming so fast down the track. It's easy to think, gosh, this would make my life so much easier. And we don't necessarily think of the long-term implications of that. The other thing to say here is that Pluto is going to be in a long-term square all of this year, all of next year for sure, to Homer. This is the symbol for Homer that we're going to have to get used to. And Homer is also in a out of sign quincunx to Sedna, metamorphosis. So this, as I've spoken about before, is really talking about a combination of the death of the old world. Pluto has just been hovering around those last few degrees of Capricorn, and at the same time, the birth of the new. And I'd like to remind you of really the three aspects of the myth of Homer. In one aspect, she was in her fire goddess expression. She was said to birth the 8 islands of Hawaii, because Homer in the myth is very linked to the fertility goddess of Hawaii. So that's one aspect of the myth. The other aspect is that she's an incredible regenerative energy. She could birth babies from all over her body, and she could regenerate the land, even though been laid waste. You could always produce wild food from the land and the sea. So a very powerful symbol for new earth and regeneration, almost magically. You don't have to wait for years and years. It's almost a magic transformation. The third aspect is less well known aspect of a myth. Her partner on the island had taken some wild bananas. The authoritarian leader was going to put him to death for that, because the prime food was supposed to go to the leaders before it went to the ordinary peasant people, and he was going to be put to death. So Homer gathered her community and also her spiritual strength and help, and by those reinforcements, somehow she overcame the authoritarian leader. So her energy is about spiritual help and about the community very strongly. Aquarius is also, by the way, of course, about community, collaboration, people coming together. And so those themes, all of them, are going to play a part going forwards over the next, I think, several years, but particularly the next couple of years are going to be very strong. As the old world dies, collapses, crumbles, the new earth is already being born. So I'd really like you to think about that. Another thing just to pick up on this chart is the sun is tightly square to Pluto here, 1 of Taurus square to 2 of Aquarius, both fixed signs. And this is shining a light, and the full moon in Scorpio, as you'll see in a moment, does that too. So shining a light on issues of power, secrets, control, how we feel about that. Now this sovereign surge is moving forwards in a bigger way. Our greater sense of inner authority is being birthed. How do we feel about that? It's also about secrets coming to light. That's bigger at the full moon in Scorpio. And just one final thing. Jupiter-Uranus, as I say, has a 13 to 14-year cycle. So the last time that this happened, it was exact on 28th of May 2010, 26th of December 2010, and 2nd of January 2011. But broadly, they were conjunct from May 2010 until January 2011. Now, that was in a different house area. That conjunction was between kind of 26 and 28 of Pisces at that time. Go back in your life, see which house area that falls in for you. Go back in your life to 2010, 2011, what was happening? What liberation, what freedom, what release, what breakthrough? This is called the thank the Lord aspect. I think by Eberton, actually, in his midpoint study, it's like a release from something which has been onerous or heavy. It's a kind of, in one jump he was free kind of feeling, a eureka sort of energy. So go back to those times. Remember, this was the time, 2010, 2011, Arab Spring, fossilized leaders being knocked out of power because Jupiter was expanding the revolutionary urge of Uranus. It was also the time when we had the Icelandic ash cloud expanding, the seismic activity. The volcano blew up in Iceland, and that disrupted aviation, Uranus, for some weeks and months indeed. So go back, because although it was in a different sign, you will get some ideas of how it worked for you, last time. So let us now take a look at the full moon in Scorpio. Because this comes up just 3 days later. Yes, here we go. Full moon in Scorpio. So again, I set this for the UK. Ignore the houses, ignore the clock phase. So this is happening in the UK. It's happening actually in the US on the 23rd, happening in the UK just 49 minutes past midnight clock time on the 24th of April. So these energies, as I say, are blending with Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, and Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is blending with the energies of the total solar eclipse. It's all one big month. So this is happening. A full moon is always where the sun and moon are opposite each other. It's happening at 4 degrees 18 minutes of Scorpio. So it is shining a light. See where 4 degrees 18 minutes of Scorpio falls in your chart. This is shining a light for you. And in a house area of your chart, this can mean that something's coming to culmination, something's coming to completion. It's shining a light where you couldn't see it before. And it's going to be an important one, I think, because it, again, is squaring Pluto. Pluto is actually, it doesn't look like it, I know, it looks a bit squiffy, but Pluto at 2 of Aquarius is squaring the moon and the sun here. It's a T-square. T-square in fixity. Big issues around power, control, truth, revelations, secrets coming to light, all of those big, big themes. So I think this is going to be an absolutely fascinating time about where power lies, how we feel power lies, and it's going to be very highlighted right through April. Now, Taurus, where the sun is a sign of simplicity. The moon is a sign of complexity. So be aware of that in your life, where you feel there is emotional complexity, manipulation, control happening in relationships. They could be really highlighted right now. You become much more aware of any manipulation, power over relationships, whether they are in society or whether they are individual for you. And it's important that we become aware of them before we can change them. But Taurus is the sign of simplicity. And remember, just going to put bare feet on the grass, taking deep breaths, listening to the birds, closing your eyes. That will just decompress your energy from whatever complexity you're experiencing at this time. This is also, as I say, about secrets, Pluto. And this is also the financial axis. So secrets coming to light about money. Taurus is wealth, currencies, banking. Scorpio is investments, big money, that kind of thing. hidden money, secret money, big money in that sense. So we could see a lot coming to light around money which has been hidden away, repressed, underhand money, criminal money, that kind of thing coming to light now. We could see some significant developments in digital currencies because we have just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, wealth, currencies. Uranus is digital, and Jupiter expands that. Now, this could be further moves in centralized digital currencies. The direction of travel with all the Aquarius energy is decentralized, because there will also be moves towards decentralized currencies, microcurrencies, all kinds of developments in those areas. So please look for those, because, of course, there is more freedom with those, as we well know. So it could, the greater attempts at centralization, of course, could be via technology, Aquarius. So again, be aware of that too. The fact that this is a T-square of Pluto to the Sun and Moon here at this full moon, it's another big choice point. And we have to become, so often in our lives, I think, for all of us, we've lived our lives up to the last few years of just kind of swimming along and going along with the herd, maybe for a lot of us, because there wasn't a big challenge to that. But I think over the last few years, we've become much more aware of those challenges. And so get to that eagle's perch point. Get to that eagle's perch point as you are making very important decisions around freedom, around currencies, money, around technology. Make eagle's perch long-term strategic decisions. This could also be about safety and security issues, Taurus, Scorpio axis, safety and security. So do what you can in that regard. And I think being in a group of like-minded people can be enormously helpful in terms of safety and security, and feeling part of a group, feeling part of a community where you're all sharing, you're all helping each other. It's just really wonderful when you're in that situation. But make decisions carefully, slowly, not rushing into them, from an eagle's perch, long-term strategic. Okay, I'm observing, I'm thinking like a chess player. Where are these decisions going to take me if I think 3 or 4 moves down the road, or even more than that, in fact? So being very wise in your choices. We have a beautiful aspect here between the moon and Haumea, because the moon highlights at this full moon those themes, those 3 themes around Haumea that I've just spoken about. Those 3 themes around Haumea that I've just spoken about. The fire goddess aspect of producing land where there was none before, the 8 islands of Hawaii, of regeneration of ourselves and the earth. And I think this is going to be amazing in terms of anti-aging, longevity for us. I think it's going to be incredible with all kinds of supplements and technologies going forwards, but also the issue around that she won to save her husband over the authoritarian leaders by calling in spiritual and community help. And I think that's a very important theme that's being highlighted at this full moon. So also another thing to highlight here is Mars is conjunct Neptune. Now, at one level, that can be disinformation. We're in a fog. They're in Pisces. We're in a fog. Things aren't clear. A much better expression of this, and remember, any astrological aspect can be expressed in a less positive way or a more positive. This is around spiritual action, and spiritual action can be practicing yoga, practicing Tai Chi, Qigong, that kind of thing. It can be taking compassionate action, doing something compassionate in the world, helping to deliver aid somewhere, working at a food bank, working on a soup run. What can you do to be spiritually compassionate and help other people? Pisces, help the underdog, help the one on the periphery of society, the outcast, Pisces. Also, just to mention that as we move into the end of the month, I'm going to stop sharing here. That Pluto is barely moving in this second half of April. It's barely moving. It's drilling down on 2 degrees of Aquarius. So if you have any planets between about 0 and 4 of the fixed signs, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, you could be feeling very strong issues around control, manipulation. Ultimately, these are always around empowerment. They're always around stepping into your own power, but you could feel pressured as the process going into that. So be aware of that. So it's barely moving. And then as we get into into early May, on the 2nd of May, Pluto moves stationary retrograde. So it's boom, big issues around control and power, where the power lies. And also we have Mars moving into Aries on the 1st of May and going lickety-split, 5 weeks in Aries. Mars and Aries both are about speed, but it also moves fast through Aries as well. So the whole energy is going to shift quite significantly once Mars leaves Pisces and moves into Aries. So turn of the month, we're going to feel a very different energy. Just right at the end of the month, really, the 29th, 30th, Mars is at 29 degrees of Pisces. Now, 29 degrees of any sign is known as the anaretic degree, and this is where the energy of that sign can express in a less positive way. So we could see more flooding at that time, Pisces, issues around water toxicity, that kind of thing. It's fleeting because it just lasts a couple of days, and then it's bang, 1st of May into Aries with a very different shift of energy. So, but just be aware of that too. And really, I want to say through these incredibly fast moving times, because it's so easy to be swept along with the whitewater rafting dynamic events, because they're going to be moving so quickly, and they're very colorful and they're very dynamic. But make your locus of power internal, not external. Yes, be aware broadly of the big things happening in the world from your eagle's perch. You're not actually helping if you're negatively engaged in the horror of what's happening in the world. Because if you go into all that fear and horror, and how can you're not helping the people on the ground. We're much more helpful if we're trying to create a better world. I mean, yes, if we can be of practical assistance delivering aid, fantastic, but it's very hard to do. We've seen what's happened to some aid workers recently, which is just tragic. So that's very hard to do. If we can send money via reliable charity that the money will get to the people, and we can afford to do that, great thing to do. However, one of the best and easiest, most efficient things for us to do is to create a way better world where this kind of war and horror and disease and death is absolutely unthinkable. That's where we've got to get to. That's why I'm on this earth doing this work right now. I could not feel more strongly about that. We can do this. We absolutely are doing this. So I feel pretty warrior about this. We need to get to the stage, and we are really making progress with this. Even whatever happens on the nightly news, underneath the whole undercurrent is one of an army of love, a revolution of love coming together. And many of you absolutely know that and you can feel it. But make your locus of power, your orientation of power internal, not external. Don't be swept along. You know, the great value of astrology, and the reason I go through these updates to explain things, is because we can see, yep, this is meant to happen. Yep, this is meant to happen. The astrology is demonstrating that these things are meant to be happening. In fact, astrologers, as I said in a recent video, would be very surprised if they weren't happening right now. This collapse, this smashing out of the old kitchen cupboards is meant to be happening. It's messy, it's noisy, it's not comfortable, it's not easy for many people, but it has to happen, that breakdown of the old. We don't have to live at that level, as I so often say. So make your internal center of power, your radio dial, your focus of power. So everything begins from here. You can do that just by the breath, as I've said many times. Come back to the breath. Several times a day, shut your eyes, drop into the breath, watch the breath. Just watch the breath. Imagine that you're breathing in and out of your heart. Or go deeper, do the baby belly breath. Just like babies do. Watch how a baby breathes. Let the breath breathe you. So you drop the breath into the belly. You watch it so it gradually becomes slower, deeper. The exhale becomes slightly longer than the inhale. You are changing your physiology in moments. Make that a regular habit as often as you can through the day. And even if you can't close your eyes, say you're in a business meeting, you can't close your eyes, you can still shift your focus internally to your breath. For free, every single person in the world can do that. You don't need to go on a course, you don't need to read a book, you don't need to study anything. You just drop into your breath. Really encourage you to do that. So make your state of being your absolutely top priority. What's your state of being? Is it calm? Is it loving? Is it peaceful? Is it joyful? Is it compassionate? Is it grateful? What's your state of being? Fear is the old pattern. Reactivity and fear is the old pattern. And we have to catch ourselves to say, do you know what? I'm not going to do that. I've done that to death for a lifetime. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm becoming a new human. I'm becoming, in fact, a galactic human, or remembering my galactic citizenry. I'm not going to make fear my pattern. I'm going to make love my pattern. And I'm not talking about a romantic, pink, fluffy love, as you know. I'm talking about love as a state of being, that we live from the heart. We live from love. I'm going to keep on saying this. I get very boring and repetitive, but I'm going to keep on saying this. That when something dramatic happens, we catch ourselves. So, done it to death. Not going to do it. Going to change the pattern. This is part of Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Change the pattern. Change the habitual reaction. And I'm doing the same too. Believe me, I'm in this with you. And it may seem in the times we're moving into now that I've often used the analogy of the actors in the theatre. Now the actors are actually bringing down the scenery. There was a time when they were just trying to kind of shout louder to keep the play going, so we didn't notice the theatre scenery was collapsing. Now they're actively collapsing it. So it's getting a bit wild out there. Just know that's going to happen. Know that's part of the unfoldment. That's part of what astrology is expecting as well. And just remind you again of an analogy I've mentioned several times, but it's such a helpful one, that when I was learning that very basic martial arts course when I was 26, and I was going off to do some really months of travel on my own, and I was doing that martial arts course, and we had to split a builder's plank with our hand. And if you just focused on the plank, you really hurt your hand. And the teacher taught us that the trick was to focus 6 inches below the plank, where you want to get to. You focus on where you want to get to, not the obstacle, not the plank. And even when I was 26, that kind of really registered with me as being a very important life lesson. Very important. A long time ago, but it stuck with me. So our strength didn't suddenly change in that moment because I broke 3 in a row. It's the focus. Your focus is your superpower. What are you focused on? What are you locking onto? Lock onto love as your focal point. Lock onto love as your docking station. A lot is going to happen this year. At the end of this year, we are going to be standing in a very different place to now. Make sure that place is more loving, more peaceful, more compassionate, more connected with each other through our hands and through our hearts. We're connecting with each other through our hearts across the globe. And we are creating an army and a revolution of love. God bless you. I'm proud. I feel quite emotional now. I'm proud to be with you on this journey of many lifetimes. God bless. I hope that helped you. There was a lot in that video today. I'll put the link for the original Jupiter-Uranus video below with all the big themes in it. And have a wonderful full moon in Scorpio on the 23rd, 24th, depending on where you are in the world. It's a big month. God bless. Bye for now.